It's always quite a throwback for me to be back in London, as this is the city where I got my first job when I moved here as an 18-year-old. And it's quite the journey it has been since, how things are now, that I have a very good quality of life and I am successful, and this wasn't always the case. It was nowhere near the case. It makes me very grateful. It's definitely very humbling to remember the beginnings, and I thought I would share it with you in case it is helpful to anyone in similar shoes as I was when I was 18. I took a gap year after high school because I wanted to improve my English, and my cousin was living in London at the time. I thought it would be a good idea to get some life experience, move here and then go back to Hungary to actually study at the university. English philology, that was going to be my studies anyway, so English made sense. But I come from such a modest family that moving to a really cool and expensive country with the most expensive, or one of the most expensive cities, that came at a price. I had enough money from my parents to make it through about 1 month. So I had 1 month to find a job, any job, if I wanted to stay in the country. I moved into a flat share with my cousin, her and I sharing a room in a house with another 6 people, so the 8 of us living in a house, 1 bathroom, 1 kitchen in a not very nice area of London. That's what we could afford. And there was no internet, of course, at the house, so I would go every day to the job center, to the closest job center, to start printing out advertisements, any advertisements, and I would go to the library to use the internet to be able to see my inbox and send CVs to all the jobs that I printed out at the center. My CV didn't consist of much. I was a high school graduate from Eastern Europe in England, trying to find my first proper job. As job experience, all I had on my CV was giving a few chess lessons at the chess club that I played at. And chess player was probably the only thing that stood out on my CV, but it didn't mean much at the time, not for the job applications, unfortunately. I sent my CV to so many places. I applied for anything and everything I could that didn't require prior experience, that didn't require a degree, and it didn't require you to be a native speaker. So basically a lot of student jobs and a lot of low-wage jobs. One advertisement that stood out to me and wasn't going to be minimal wage for student rate called my attention, because I was like, wow, requires no experience and I get a little bit better paid than the complete minimal wage for an 18-year-old. It was at a mortuary. I didn't know what the word mortuary means. Thank goodness I told my cousin about the application before I actually went on to interview for this role, because I had no idea. I was going to be an assistant for the procedure with dead bodies. Yes, I learned the word since, and I did not become a mortuary assistant. I don't think I'm ready for it. I have all the respect in the world for people that are able to do those kinds of jobs, but it wasn't for me. What was for me and ended up being my first job was, I guess, an even more terrifying place. My only job application that got through and I interviewed and got the job was at a wholesale. A wholesale that was selling items for shops like Poundland or 99p stores. So basically items that then are sold for a low price, but you are not a store. The place where I was working is a warehouse where the shops are shopping. So to be a checkout assistant at a warehouse like that meant I wasn't lifting a bottle of Coca-Cola, I was lifting an entire case of Coca-Cola. It wasn't scanning a barcode for a chocolate, it was an entire box of heavy chocolate. And I love chocolate, but it wasn't meant to be a job for a tiny, not very muscular person like me. But I was determined. I was determined. My cousin told me the first job will be whatever I can get. I need to go for it because I have no money to stay in the country if I don't accept it. So I go for this job. I start working at the wholesale in the autumn. And as the season proceeds, it starts getting colder and colder. This place has no heating. Imagine a warehouse that doesn't even have a proper door or heating or walls. You're working there throughout the winter. I was wearing the thickest of tights with double pants, double coat, gloves, hat every day, just to not be freezing inside the warehouse. That was a very cold winter in England, particularly so, as if it wasn't rough enough to be working at the warehouse. I was the only girl. And I guess I was the only girl because it really wasn't neither a comfortable nor a very easy job. Lifting all the heavy boxes, working in a place that's freezing. There were rats, dead rats, found under the shelves on a weekly basis. That was the hygiene of the place. There's one bathroom for all the floor, and we were quite a lot of people in this not very tidy, not very clean, and not very safe conditions. I worked there Monday to Friday and Sunday on a part-time job, 5 hours a day on minimum wage. For an 18-year-old, it was even lower of a minimum wage. And I also volunteered every afternoon in an after-school club that was run by a nun. And the idea was that I will try to survive through a few months at the wholesale, at this warehouse, through the winter. And while I'm working there, I'll get some teaching experience at the after-school club, and that will give me a proper job experience to put on my CV and be able to apply for teaching assistant jobs, because that was going to be my goal, to be able to work at a school, work with children, work in education. So I was working these two jobs. In the morning until the afternoon, I was working at the wholesale, and as soon as I finished at the wholesale, commuted an hour and a half to go to the after-school club in my neighborhood and help children with their homeworks, help children studying, and be there to accompany them. I really liked that job. That was a very rewarding job, but it was also really tough to be working these two jobs from Monday to Friday. On Saturday, I was at the Saturday school. We would take the kids on trips. We would go to excursions. It was really fun. But then on Sunday, I would be back at the warehouse. And then it starts again. And living on minimum wage on a part-time job while also volunteering meant I had no money for anything. And I was so poor that I made a spreadsheet going to all the main supermarkets in London. And I wrote down on my spreadsheet how much the cheapest bread costs, how much is the egg, how much is the cheapest pasta, how much is tomato sauce. I was making a list of my most basic ingredients that I would eat every day, all day, every week, and see where can I save even a penny or two so that I would make it to the end of the month. If that was already not enough commitment, I also really wanted to make it to the Olympic team of Hungary at chess. I was training every night, an hour or two. I didn't have much energy left in me after the double shift every day, but I was very determined to become an Olympic chess player. I remember being mad at my cousin because we were sharing a room, and she would come home from her job at Tesco's and put on TV because she wanted to relax, and I would be mad at her because I needed silence to study. I was so not nice to her during those times. I was full of stress and anger, and I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. I didn't know a lot about me at the time. And I just really wanted my own space, but we were living in a house with another 6 to 7 people, sharing the bathroom, sharing the kitchen, and having no alone time, no me time space anywhere at all. I would go out to the parks whenever I could, but as soon as it became cold, it was just impossible to escape that environment. That winter was probably one of my worst depressions, and I didn't even know what was the word for that at the time. I didn't know what my emotions meant, but it was really tough. It was really difficult. That I knew. My sister came to visit me at Christmas because I didn't even have enough money to fly home. So my parents sent her to me so I would have company, and my cousin, my sister, and I could have a Christmas meal together. I remember eating so much at that Christmas because I guess I was hungry, but also I was so stressed. I was so sad, and I didn't know what those emotions meant or how to deal with them. I was coping with my emotions by eating tons whenever there was food, but I didn't have much money for food, so it would have to be occasions like that when we just made a special meal for Christmas, and here I am eating as much as I can because I don't know how to cope. That same winter, my cousin also spotted an event that was going to be on one of the main squares in London, a chess event. It was going to be an ice chess match between London and Moscow, two schools facing each other on a gigantic chessboard made out of ice. She took me there, and I remember standing in the crowd watching this awesome event, and the host for BBC was Daniel King, Grandmaster Daniel King. I remember seeing him with the microphone and just looking at this incredible job that he was doing. I didn't know him. I knew of him because he was a grandmaster, but I didn't know him. I didn't know what it was like to host the broadcast. I didn't know what his job was like, but I admired it. It looked so cool. He was like so charismatic on camera, so cool, and the event was fascinating. I think this deep inside me was one of those moments when maybe subconsciously I fell in love with broadcasting. I fell in love with this line of work. But it took me years from then to actually start working in that line of job, because it's not something that you can just land into. It's not something that you just like end up saying, hello at the BBC, I want to work with you. Danny worked his whole life to be there, to be hosting that event, and he earned that place. And I think it gave me a lot of motivation overall to work toward my goals. At the time, to work toward the goal of being on the Olympic team in chess, and later down the line to work on being a broadcaster and to get to be hosting some of those cool events that everyone in the world follows. And that's what London taught me. Lots of hard work, lots of difficult times, lots of living a not very good life. But if you work hard, if you do dedicate the time to the things that you believe in, things end up working out one way or the other. Things end up turning better. I do believe that, because after working with that double shift and minimum wage and very poor conditions for about 4 or 5 months, I was able to submit my CV. Now with the teaching experience at the after school club, I was able to submit my CV to agencies that were working with schools and looking for teaching assistants and learning support assistants. That's a job that was always appealing to me. My mom is a teacher, and I always felt like teaching and education is my kind of thing. It's my line of work, a dream work, I thought. So it was this really big moment to me in my life when, after the volunteer job at the after school club, I actually could now start working in schools. It wasn't that I would get an immediate job. I was basically only assigned to schools where someone was missing, being on a sick leave or not being able to make it on a day. I would just fill in for teaching assistants, but it was still something that helped me leave the warehouse behind, not have to freeze there anymore and not have to deal with the dead rats either. And the teaching assistant job gave me an environment that was a lot more welcoming too, working with teachers and other assistants, and them being just very nice and kind to me, and respecting that I come from a different country, so I have a different accent, I have a different background, and I'm here to help children with their learning abilities. I was first assigned to a kid with Down syndrome. I've never worked with children with disabilities, but I tried my best. I read as much as I could about what can help and how to properly help them at the school. That was only a one-day assignment, but he was such a kind, cute kid, and I was trying my best to be a great support to him. After which I was assigned to a kid with ADHD. I didn't know what ADHD meant. Again, I looked it up. I was reading about his condition, and I was experiencing every day what it was like for him, what his parents went through, and what it was like for him to not be able to sit in class and not be able to focus. He would run out of the classroom whenever he could. I was chasing him around the playground, but he always found it fun. And then we would just sit down by the playground, and I would bring out his book and we would study there, because I thought, you know what? it's okay that you don't want to sit in the classroom. We're just gonna sit here outside and we're gonna learn here. It's okay. And luckily the teacher was very on board with just any kind of help. And even though my methods, very inexperienced and very not tested, weren't the most traditional, but I think the teacher understood that I want the best for Andrew. Andrew was his name. It started working better. It started working that we became buddies who would study by the playground, who would study sitting on the ground outside. Wherever he would want to go to, we would try to not limit what he was doing, as long as we were able to turn it into a game where he ends up reading with me, learning together, and doing something for his future. Andrew was a little angel. I worked with him for 2 months. That was my longest assignment in London before I went back for the summer and went back to study at university. And if it wasn't for me going back to university, I would have loved to stay at that school and I would have loved to continue working with Andrew, because it was very rewarding to be helping someone and helping him feel good about himself and not feel like he's an outsider, not feel like he's being singled out, and not make him feel like he's different. It's interesting how in present day, my boyfriend has ADHD and I have been diagnosed with autism, mental health conditions that at the time to me were a mystery, and I had to read about them to be able to help Andrew and other kids at the school. And now I'm the one that is experiencing it also in her own life. Goodness me, there's so much to the brain and how they are wired and how they operate. And there's pros and cons to everything. I don't think of them as disabilities. I think of them as we have different strengths and weaknesses, and trying to see those strengths and weaknesses, help with the weaknesses, and get beefed up on the strengths. Is that even anything that makes sense? I'm already rambling, but my point with this video, I guess, was that I started with a really rough job, but I did stick to it as hard as it was, and that helped me get to a better position, get to be able to apply for better jobs and start a better life. It was a long road, it was a long journey, but if you do believe in what you're doing and if you do put in the work, I truly believe that things will work out in your way. And just one more fun fact. At the after school club, one of the kids that I was working with, they always had their snack boxes with them, of course, for after school. And this particular kid always had a type of yogurt that has chocolate balls in it. You would fold a little tiny pocket of chocolate balls into the yogurt and then scoop it out and eat it that way. And I had never had that in my life. And I was so poor that I could definitely not afford fancy things like yogurt or desserts. But I told myself one day, when I'm gonna get a teaching assistant job and be able to leave the warehouse behind, one day I'm gonna buy this. Just one of those yogurts, just one. And so I did. When I got my job with Andrew, and when I got this assignment for being able to work at the school for 2 months, I bought that yogurt with the chocolate balls in it. And I will never forget that. As simple and as little of a gesture or moment it was, it meant a lot to me, because it meant that I guess I made progress and I was going in the right direction in this confusing world called life. And I wish you a journey like that. I wish you a journey that hopefully is less full of dead rats and more full of friends or family that supports you, because without the support of my cousin and without my sister visiting me that Christmas, without having people to talk to, I think it would have been a very difficult experience. It still was difficult, but having people to support you always helps. And once I got the teaching assistant job, there was no one stopping me from also becoming a chess teacher. And I was giving private lessons at a family where, guess what? The boy also had ADHD, so the parents thought, we're gonna hire this chess teacher so that he'll be able to focus more. But maybe that's a story for another video. I ended up teaching quite a few kids with ADHD through chess to help them with their focus. And now I'm the one that gets all the time distracted. I guess I have been like that my whole life, but I didn't know that I'm both autistic and probably has ADHD too. Oh well. I hope that this video was an interesting watch, even if I ramble and my attention gets drawn in a lot of directions. But I thought I would share this, and I'll share more of these stories with you if you find them interesting. Let me know in the comments if you would like more of these stories from life's journey and what it was like for an 18-year-old girl from Eastern Europe to try to make it in a country and in a city that's damn cool and pretty, but so expensive and very hard to find a job, especially your first job with no experience. See you in the next video, and I wish you the very best with your job hunt. I believe in you. I hope you know that.